So hey everybody again. I just want to do a super quick little video thingy because of the time of the year. I mean, everybody knows, worldwide, it's Christmas. It's a time of the year that everybody sort of dreads if you're a Jehovah's Witness, and strangely enough, people sort of dread it when they're an ex-Jehovah's Witness as well. And I've been keeping a look on the Facebook groups that I'm sure many of you are involved with as well, or something similar. And I don't know if you've noticed it, but I certainly have. A lot of people's expressions are turning towards Christmas, obviously, and New Year. And strangely enough, I expected, especially after being in the witnesses for so long, and they're sort of like, oh, people can't wait to leave the organization just so they can celebrate Christmas. How selfish and shallow are they? That's what we're sort of taught, right, for years. That Christmas is just an indulgence, that people leave the faith, they'd rather just have a good time rather than serve God. And yet, strangely enough, I'm looking at these groups and I'm looking at the people commenting, and overwhelmingly the feeling is the opposite, strangely enough. People seem to be very apprehensive about Christmas, and it's not for the reasons that most people would think. It's not really about the cost or making the dinner or seeing the relatives, as people who've celebrated for a long time may be feeling. It's actually a psychological problem, which at the same time is not surprising at all if you look at it for what it is. That the Jehovah's Witnesses are in fact a cult. They are psychologically damaging and controlling cult, and they often hit you with psychological warfare rather than outright rules of you can't do this, you can't do that, because it's much easier to affect somebody when you plant that seed in their head, like in the movie Inception. They put an idea in your head and you can't get rid of it. Even the Bible says it's hard to overturn strongly entrenched things. In other words, thoughts, feelings, opinions, prejudices, or whatever that you have about things, which you've had for a long, long time, and even when you move away from the witnesses, you somehow can't get those thoughts out of your head. They're strongly entrenched. And when it comes to Christmas, we seem to shy away from it, even though we're not witnesses anymore. And whether it's your personal desire to do Christmas or not, for whatever reason, you could want to do it because it's pretty, because your family do it, because you just want to break free of these rules now that don't mean anything, blah, blah, blah. Or you could decide not to do it because you just don't want to. You feel too old to do it now. You don't particularly want presents or to eat a big meal. What's the point, blah, blah, blah. And you could just decide not to do it. So whatever reason you choose, that's fine. And yet a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses who obviously are ex-witnesses now seem to be super scared of Christmas. I mean, for example, there was one woman commenting on Facebook yesterday. It was Christmas Day yesterday, for those of you tuning in later on in the year. It was the 25th of December yesterday. And someone from America, I believe, was upset. And she put on the group, "Every Christmas I ruin it. I've been disfellowshipped now for 10 years. And my husband and I celebrate Christmas every year. And every year I have some kind of mental blockage when it comes to this time of the year. And now that we've had children, it's getting worse because I feel like I'm ruining the kids' Christmases, that I don't know how to do it." And it's quite funny she said that, because that is true. With Christmas, it's very traditional. People have set ideas and set times and habits that they do every single Christmas, and a lot of those are meaningful in a sentimental way. They break out grandma's old ornaments for the tree. They do this particular cake from a recipe, blah, blah, blah. And yet, when you launch into Christmas as an adult, you sort of go into it without any sort of preparation. You don't really know what to expect. I mean, you look at Christmas movies and think, okay, that's the way it should be done then, because you have nothing else to draw on, no experience or anything like that. I mean, perhaps if you were a non-believer when you were sort of born and then was converted into a witness maybe when you were in your teen years and then left afterwards, maybe it would be easier to get back into it because you sort of had that grounding in Christmas already. But for many Jehovah's Witnesses, they're born into it, or they were converted at a very young age and they can't remember Christmas at all. Or maybe they came from an abusive family and Christmas was never very good anyway, so now they're an adult who can do it themselves. They find it very difficult to enjoy it, to really launch into it. And I found that was very interesting because this woman, she was sort of talking further about it, and she says her husband, who was never a Jehovah's Witness, doesn't understand why she feels this way, and he actually kind of makes it worse. Criticizes her, says, you're ruining Christmas for everyone with your moods and everything, and that makes her feel worse. Now, that is very dangerous. If you're listening to this and you are a partner of somebody who has issues with Christmas because of Jehovah's Witnesses and all that kind of thing, and that goes with anything, blood transfusions, abortion, anything, homosexual stuff, it doesn't matter what it is. You have to learn to identify where these thoughts are coming from, if that's your partner or your child or friend or whoever, because people sort of underestimate the psychological impact being in a cult for so long has on somebody. And that goes for anybody. I put it this way to the woman. I said, the fault really here is with your husband, okay? The psychological damage it's done to you is extensive. You're not, even after all these years, you still can't get into Christmas. And it's something you want to do, obviously. But somehow you've been held back by these old Jehovah's Witness teachings that are still in your head, and the feeling of guilt. And this is a mad thing. A lot of people feel this way. They feel overwhelming guilt. In fact, the more they feel they enjoy Christmas, or the more enthusiastic they feel, the more guilty they feel afterwards. It's like a knock-on effect. And in the end, Christmas is spent in confusion, depression, small moments of joy and happiness, and all of a sudden they sort of catch themselves and they go, no, what am I doing? I just pulled a cracker, I just ate this cake, I just sang a song, I just had a dance. Oh no, I feel terrible now. So that's something that seems to hit a lot of people very hard, the guilt of enjoying something they were told not to enjoy. In fact, they must hate it. And I said to the woman, she seemed to be a bit like, oh well, he just doesn't get it. As if that was sort of excusing this guy. And I said, no. Let's put it this way, shall we? If it's difficult for people listening to understand where I'm coming from with this thing. Imagine that your friend or your boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whoever, was a Muslim their entire life. They were born into a Muslim family, they have a Muslim name, they practice the religion regularly, they fast during Ramadan and Eid and all that kind of thing. And I mean, I'm not an expert on Islam or anything, so don't quote me on this, but they do all these things. They read from the Quran, they talk about Muhammad. It's part of their life. It's not just a religion, it's a lifestyle. It affects everything. What they wear, the language they speak, their habits, blah, blah, blah. And of course, being a Muslim means that you cannot eat certain types of meat, like pork or bacon. Sometimes they're not allowed to drink alcohol at all, blah, blah, blah. Now imagine if that Muslim person, when they're in their 20s or even their 30s or more, decide for whatever reason not to be a Muslim anymore. Well, their family, more likely than not, sadly, will probably shun them, probably kick them out. I know some Muslims who left the faith and were even threatened with death. It's that serious. Now imagine if that person, he or she leaves the area. They still have the psychological impacts. They're still lonely. They miss their mom and dad. They miss their friends. Maybe their husband or wife is separated from them now and they miss them and the children. But they're determined anyway, let's be happy. I'm just going to live like a normal person. Now, when that ex-Muslim person is introduced to pork or bacon products, they're going to look at the plate and they're going to think, what? They're more likely than not going to think, I'm not supposed to eat this. Then they have to remind themselves, wait, that was a rule that doesn't apply to me anymore. I'm not a Muslim anymore. But how easy do you think it would be for a Muslim person to sit down and enjoy, not just to eat, but to enjoy a meal that contains products that they have been forbidden their entire lives from eating? And it's not just a matter of, you can't eat it because I said so. It's all the negative propaganda that goes with it. It's dirty meat. Infidels eat this meat, blah, blah, blah. And that means that it is associated with much more than just food. It's now a whole psychological chapter in the mind that is dedicated to anti-products of a certain type. So when that person starts to open up and eat these things, it doesn't just feel like you and I would eat pork products, like, oh, well, it's just food. It now feels like they are literally breaking down barriers inside their own head. They're now being disobedient. Now they are expecting punishment. Now they get scared and anxious and they feel like, I hope to God, who I may or may not believe in anymore, that nobody sees me doing this from my old community, Because even though, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not Muslim, they're going to look at me and think he or she over there has been Muslim for 99% of their life, and now they're being disobedient. It's not like quitting your job. It's not like handing in your resignation and just walking away and doing whatever you want and they don't mind you anymore. It's not like that at all. Once you're in a religion or a cult, it's part of your entire life and it gets into everything. It's like the roots of a tree or a weed. It doesn't just go straight down. It spreads into everything. And disentangling those roots from your mind is extremely hard. It may be impossible for all I know, I don't know. But I know it's not instant and it's not easy. And the sad thing is, if that Muslim person, and of course in parallel, if a Jehovah's Witness, who is now an ex-Jehovah's Witness, decides to do something that they were previously forbidden from doing, they may have even hated or been afraid of that idea for years, and now they do it. If they do it with minimal effort, if it doesn't feel like a big deal actually, then guess what? They get now a wave of guilt because they think, maybe I wasn't a good Christian then. Maybe I have been faithless all these years. Wow, what kind of Christian was I? And so you get hits in the stomach both ways, you can't really avoid it. And that's the thing, but people sort of, when they leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, the same for me. I didn't really expect, to be hit by certain things that I have been hit by. And it comes up very, very quickly. It can hit you really hard. All of a sudden, you get these feelings of guilt and fear, real bad fear, and you look around like, oh God, who's looking, who's watching, what's going to happen to me now? Because I tell you, I don't care how big and strong you are in the congregations as a witness. The one thing everyone is afraid of, from the big to the small, from the old to the young, from the old to the new, is going in that back room with 3 elders and that door closing on you. Everyone is afraid of that because it is the equivalent of going into the headmaster's office in school and you know that you're for the high jump. And that's the problem. So even though you're not under their authority anymore, you still feel like you ought to look over the shoulder or over your shoulder because you think, God, if they ever find out, I'm going to be for the high jump now. And sadly, with the witnesses, they do make it their mission to catch you even though you've left. And they sort of will spy on you, drive past your house, make sure that you're keeping to the towing the line and all the rest. Because when it does come to Christmas, if you have faded away and you haven't openly on a piece of paper written down, I am disfellowshipped or I am disassociated, blah, 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 I am now not one of you guys. If you fade away, which is what a lot of people prefer to do, because that way you sort of get the best of both worlds if you can play it right. If you fade away, you sort of creep away from the books. You become an inactive Jehovah's Witness. A lot of people find this is the best opportunity now to move away, get out of the area, get away from the congregation. Don't give anyone your new address. Don't give anybody your new phone number. Don't let them find you. Sadly, the witnesses are extremely, They're kind of like hunting dogs. They'll lose the scent. They get frustrated. They may forget about you for a while, but do not be mistaken, they will absolutely try again. I mean, even for people who are openly disfellowshipped or whatever. My dad, he was an elder for a long, long time, and he often said to me, oh, it's the time of the year again to make the annual visit on such ones. And I remember thinking, why? If they've already been associated or disfellowshipped, why go back after a whole year? Oh, well, we've got to. Just to see what's going on, just to see where they are in life, just to see if they want to come back, blah, blah, blah. Not very nice. And even back then, as a small child, I thought that was a bit weird, a bit invasive, a bit hostile, actually, to sort of creep up on somebody's house unannounced and sort of see if they're being good or bad, and therefore making a judgment when that person has said, I don't want anything to do with you guys anymore. But they will keep trying. This is a piece of advice too for ex-witnesses who have faded, especially, and are trying to keep these tentative holds on people whom they love, who are still witnesses, who for now may keep in touch with them because they haven't been officially kicked out yet. This is just a word of advice. Another person on this Facebook group put up a comment about a week before Christmas, and she said, the elders are doing exactly what I just said. I faded away, and now suddenly I'm sort of getting the feeling that they're going to come back. I haven't seen them for about 6 months. And now it's Christmas, I have a feeling. And I think she said that she got a phone call from an elder, and she sort of didn't answer or hung up or something. And so she was sort of like, I dealt with him. And I said, listen, just a word of warning. If they can't get you on the phone, they will most likely try and come to your door if they know where you live. And she was like, yeah, they know where I live, sadly, because her mother is a witness or whatever, and sort of, let it slip where she was. And I said, listen, this is a problem now because I'll come to your house. And she was like, why? Why is that a big deal? So what if they come to the house? Oh, let them in, I'll show them the tree, oh, blah, blah, blah. And this is the thing, everyone was sort of encouraging her, yeah, don't let them control your life, blah, blah, blah. But this is the problem now. If you're fading away, you cannot be open. This is the whole problem with being a fader and not just an open, disfellowshipped person or disassociated one. If you fade away, you're playing the cloak and dagger game. Are you really in? Are you really out? Are you still a witness? Are you not? They will not let it go until they have a clear answer as to what you're doing. And seeing as you're not coming to meetings anymore, I assume, or coming to the odd one once in a blue moon, their assumptions are going to be that you are doing exactly what you're doing, and that is fading. They're not going to think you're an exemplary Christian if you're not at the meetings and you're not on the ministry, are they? So their mission now is to prove conclusively that they can now boot you out. So if you're a fader, you've got to play this game extra carefully now. And a lot of people sort of go, oh, why bother being a fader? Well, guess what? Sadly, if you have family members who are still witnesses and friends and children or whatever, it's about power and control. If, for example, I've heard people who are sort of fading away and their husband or wife is still a witness and may even be separated from them, but that person has the children. If that person now becomes disfellowshipped or disassociated openly, the witness spouse will make sure that they can't see the kids. The children will be told that person is evil and from Satan and will die at Armageddon, and that person will probably remarry to a witness man or woman who will then assume the role of parents. It's a lot to gamble, it's a lot to give up, it's a lot to play with, and nobody should be sort of flamboyant and go, oh well, okay, we'll just give it up then and be free, because sadly in this world that's not realistic. So when it comes to Christmas stuff, just be careful if you have in fact faded but you still want to celebrate or get involved, even in the smallest way, even if it's just Christmas cards on your wall, even if it's just a tree, even if it's just a snowman in your garden. Be careful, because this is the time of year the elders will come a-creeping. They absolutely will. It's not just Santa Claus coming down your chimney this year, it's a few elders as well with swag bags full of watchtowers and the disassociation book, Shepherd the Flock. That's what's coming down your chimney this year, so be super careful. I advise that woman, if they come back, be prepared. By all means, keep your decorations up if you want, but make sure that they cannot be seen if somebody is to creep around the house, or if you open the front door and guess who's there? 2 elders armed and ready. When they look into your house past you, it's wise to make sure that area is clear of any Christmas stuff. Keep it in your living room, keep it in your bedroom, put it in your bathroom, wherever you want to put it, in your hallway. But do not put it somewhere that the elders will be able to get a direct eyeful, because that, in their eyes, is evidence that you are now disassociating yourself by celebrating unchristian activities, which is what they'll see it as. So just use your brains, please, people who are fading away and trying to do this carefully. It's an awful lot to risk just for Christmas. Use your brains. Be discreet, even the Bible says that, there's a time to be merry, there's a time to not be merry, you should be cautious as serpents, blah, 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 innocent as doves. Do it. Use your Bible training for some good if you are going to do this year. So when it comes to, again, back to what I started yakking on about, the feelings of guilt and the sort of psychological reactions that come about when it comes to Christmas or any other activity that we were previously told we can't do. That includes as well sex. I know many Jehovah's Witnesses who struggle to understand that they are allowed to have sex now that they're married. They still view sex as dirty, that they expect to be punished, that now they're not a virgin, they've committed a sin, but they're married. But it doesn't matter, because this has been drilled into them that it's a problem. I'll tell you, there's an example actually I can use for this. In places like Thailand and other places where elephants are used for tourists to pose with and take pictures with, think about this next time you have the opportunity and say no, because it's a very, very abusive industry. The thing with elephants, you see, they're big creatures. They're very powerful and they are extremely intelligent. They're very compassionate, smart animals. So why on earth do they let people sort of poke them with sticks and paint on them and sit on their backs? Why? It's simple. When they acquire these elephants, these companies and whatever that sort of rent them out for pictures and whatever, for tourists, they separate them from their mothers because they know it has an emotional and psychological impact on them instantly. And then they put this horrible, I think it's like a hook or a stick or something sharp anyway, and they sort of poke them with it and hurt them. On their ankles, I've seen them, they have like these shackles, and inside the shackle you can only see the outside part, so it just looks like an ordinary shackle, which is bad enough, but inside there are spikes sticking into the elephant's leg. And in the end, after many, many years of this horrible abuse and the understanding that a certain sound or a certain word or a certain poke leads to intense pain and psychological fear and all the rest of it, the elephants soon learn that even if that danger isn't present, just the threat of it is enough to bring back memory of pain, and they do not do anything that would incite that reaction from the keeper. And that's the thing, with Jehovah's Witnesses, we're taught the same kind of thing when it comes to sex and Christmas and everything else in life. It's like negative propaganda that incites fear and hatred and sickness, and then the threat of punishment, of being disfellowshipped, of being a sinner and dirty. So when you finally break free and like that elephant, grown up and you can do what you want, the merest threat of that brings back all those psychological feelings, all the reactions that it's bad, it's dirty, I'm a bad person now, I feel guilty and ashamed and evil. But guess what? You have to identify those feelings. Think, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel guilty for eating a Christmas pie or a pudding or whatever? Why do I feel bad about singing a Christmas carol? Why? You have to identify, this is just because it's a normal reaction when for so long you're told you can't do something, and now that you can, you have the same feelings that this is still wrong. It's not though. It's up to you now. Once you leave the witnesses, you're not bound by their rules. You're not subject to their laws. They have nothing to do with you anymore. It's up to you to decide what you want to do. So you've got to move past that. And if your partner is having trouble supporting you in this, you have to explain to him or her exactly what's going on. Okay, not everyone is a very good partner. Not everyone is a shrink. Not everyone has a compassionate mentality. But for goodness sake, they got to try. Because it's very important, and it affects the lives of many ex-witnesses out there who are struggling with these feelings. So yeah, for this year anyway, enjoy whatever you decided to do. If you're celebrating Christmas, then have a Merry Christmas. If you're having a New Year's thing, then have a Happy New Year. If you're not, then have a splendid winter. May it be nice and warm and cozy for all of you. And may next year be better than this one, because it was a bit of a dive, honestly, let's admit it. Yeah. And please don't, and try and get rid of the guilt, because that is nothing but leftovers from a past life, and that's all it is. In fact, I think there's a scripture, again, do not quote me because I'm not even going to pretend to be an expert anymore on these things, but there was a scripture I remember, I think it was the Apostle Paul or somebody said, I know it was the New Testament anyway, to the congregations, saying that if a man was to celebrate a day or make it special and do it for the Lord, then basically everyone should leave him alone. And if someone decides not to make a certain day special and he's doing it for the Lord, leave him alone and all. And when it came to food, if someone desires to eat something that was previously forbidden but now it's not anymore, and he's doing it for the Lord, leave him alone. And if someone decides their conscience won't let them eat, leave them alone. If someone wants to eat meat that was sacrificed to idols and then they bought it at the market, leave them alone, and vice versa. And it's that principle of, in other words, mind your own business and leave people be. If they want to do something, let them do it, and don't inflict your guilt or your sanctimonious preaching on them, because it's no good for anybody, and it's completely unnecessary, and it harks back to Jehovah's Witness drilling in the mind of interfering with people's lives and judging them for it. It's a way of making people feel guilty and then bow to your wishes, and that's not good. So yeah. Anyways, thank you for listening to this podcast video thingy. The remarks and comments and feedback I'm getting from my other blogs is great. So thank you, and thanks seriously a whole bunch to anyone who's sort of a regular listener. I don't really know who is or who isn't, but it doesn't really matter. Thanks all the same to everyone. For some reason, the Jehovah's Witness and loneliness video I put up is getting a ton of views. And that really says a lot to me, I think, that if a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are, sort of, that video, that subject is hitting a nerve about being lonely, then wow, doesn't that really say something? It really is a common thing, not just an isolated thing that's going on. So yeah, thank you for listening. Please tune in for more, and peace out.